emotions with sense of touch, I feel we should follow a different approach. He is thick-skinned. Don't be so touchy. Now, that, of course, means being thin-skinned. He was paralyzed with fear. We infer by interpreting events. Look at that event. Now, if you use role theory, where conceptual roles are awarded to whatever you see there, do you see the infinite background to begin with? The grassy field, something slightly out of focus, trees and stuff in the background. And don't for a moment believe that this grassy field ends here. Goes, who knows how much further to the left or the right. But on the foreground, you have a man that is kneeling, that is watching a frisbee that is flying towards him, but he's totally unaware of the dog behind him that's leaping through the air in order to catch the frisbee. Can you see how, if we assign roles, conceptual roles, to whatever we are observing, we can make sense of what is happening there? So who is going to get the big surprise here? Not the frisbee, not the dog, certainly the man. Okay, we understand the world by associating entities with one another based on perceived similarities and differences between them. Okay, I've given you here an analysis of certain scenes in the animal kingdom. On the left-hand side, we are dealing with birds. On the right-hand side, we are dealing with fish. And what I'm showing you, if you go to the topmost node, the one for animals, you've got a rule of sorts saying that animals have bodies consisting of organs, flesh, and skeleton and skin. So that's true of all animals. Animals are conscious of their environment. Animals breathe. Animals eat. Animals have offspring. Animals can die. Now, those statements that I've made there are true of whatever follows lower down. Now here we go to fish, and we see they've got an oblong shape, they have fins, they have gills, they have scales, they live in water, and they move by swimming. Now if you go and look at birds, they have wings, they have feathers, they have lungs, and they fly. Now, and then you can go in greater detail. And what I show there is whenever humans understand things, whenever we talk, we pick words from certain categories. Some of the categories are nouns, some of them are verbs, some of them are adjectives. And we put them together to convey the meaning of what we are saying. And some of the categories are at a very generic level, superordinate level, when the word animal. But some of them are at the basic level, like birds or fish. And then some of them are at a subordinate level, like canaries, ostriches, sharks, and salmon. Now, the interesting thing from a conceptual point of view, I can tell you, doodle me a bird, and you'll be able to do it very easily. Or I can say to you, doodle a fish, and very quickly you'll be able to give me the image of a fish. But if I say to you, doodle me an animal, you can try until the cows come home, you can't doodle an And if I say to you, doodle me a canary, any of those levels, somebody with good artistic skills can do it. I certainly can't. Well, I think I'll be able to draw something that distinguishes a canary from an ostrich, but not a canary from a sparrow, for instance, or a finch. But artists, they've got an ability to do those things in great detail. So we understand the world by categorizing it. And lexical categories usually belong to one of three. The superordinate level, those are the abstract things. The basic level, those we've got gestalt images associated with them. And then the subordinate level are in greater detail of specificity, and only people with real drawing skills can draw those things. And the same is true of sound. If I say to you, make the sound of an animal, you can't do it. If I say to you, make the sound of a bird, you can say ooh, 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 or whatever the sound is that you want. If I say make the sound of a fish, you'll have a bit of difficulty, because even if it's the sound of a fish jumping out of the water, that's a very difficult sound to come up with. Okay, so we understand the world through language, and language is lexical categories, items that belong to lexical categories, and we use one of them from each of the lexical categories in order to construct sentences to communicate with one another. Okay, and then there's a sort of a mysterious element. You either see it or you don't. Let's see if you can see what is being portrayed there. Can any of you see it? That image may be a bit small and a bit too much to the side. But if you look there, you can see a three-dimensional image, one ball with a smaller ball on top of it. You can play with this later on when you get the image. Okay, seeing is noticing, and foregrounding finite figures against infinite landscapes, and comparing and classifying those figures to determine in which interactions they are engaged. Thereafter, inferring cause and effect relationships during interactions. It is not just believing, as people say. So seeing isn't just not just believing. And this last part here, inferring cause and effect relationships, that is a whole important part of statistics. You get your basic statistics that you use to describe the members of the community and what work they do, how many of them are married or unmarried, their ages or so on. And then as soon as you want to find out their perspectives and you use 5-point Likert scales, there's no way for you to analyze that except with inferential statistics. And that is why you need a statistician looking over your shoulder all of the way. Okay. Now, all of this leads up to something that is known as problem-solving research. And the way it works is like this. You start with a general problem. You decompose that general problem into a number of sub-problems. And the nature of the problem will tell you how many sub-problems there are. And by the way, there may be more problems that you can solve in a particular research project, whether it's a scholarly article that you're writing or whether it is a thesis that you're doing. If there are more problems that you can solve, you state which are the problems that you intend to solve and why. Which ones are you excluding and why? Okay. Your general problem must lead to a general aim. The aim of research is to solve the problem, and I want you to understand that clearly. There's nothing mysterious about aims and objectives. The aim of, in problem-based research, the aim of the research is to solve the problem or the problems that you've identified. So, if you break the aim up into smaller objectives, first of all, they must be totally aligned with your sub-problems. You can't have more objectives than you have sub-problems, or more sub-problems than you have objectives. And then your objectives will lead to your research questions. And this is how it works. The extent to which you have been able to solve, to answer your research questions by means of your empirical research and analysis and statistics, is the extent to which you've met your objectives, is the extent to which you've solved the problem. It's plain, easily systematic. But then the important thing that I want to tell you is this. These general questions that you have form the basis of the questions that you will pose in your questionnaire or in your interview schedule. Those questions cannot come from anywhere else except to be extracted from your general research questions. Now, if you've got 4 general research questions, it means that there will be 4 sections in your questionnaire over and above the demographic section, which gives background information. So in the end, you need to do something practical, like saying, there are 4 legitimate questions, but if I unpack all of them as questionnaire questions, will my questionnaire not be too long? And then you've got to say, for practical reasons, you are limiting your research to the following research questions. And remember, if your basic research is good, your follow-up research can focus on whatever you're leaving aside for the time being. So you've got to weigh up which are the more fundamentals of the problems. And they are the ones that will be your objectives to solve those problems, and they will form the basis of your questionnaire questions or your interview questions. And by the way, if you do mixed methods research, you must be sure that there's an alignment between your questionnaire and your interview questions. They must relate to one another, and they relate to one another in one of 2 ways. The one is, some of them, you align them precisely to be sure that you'll be able to test validity. If you get the same sort of results in your questionnaire as in your interview, then you know you've drilled into a gold vein as far as your research is concerned. But the other reason by intentionally changing your interview and your research questions slightly, you get complementary results. By shifting your focus a little bit, you are able to look for a slightly wider spectrum of information. Now, I've got 4 more minutes, so I'm just going to end with this. Once you have formulated your problem statement. It should be about 5 or 6 pages long. And in that problem statement, you indicate what the general problem is that you're solving, what the sub-problems are. And then you describe it, the background, and then you've got to do content analysis. Now, do any of you know about Wordle? It's an online service. You go and you put your research problem statement into Wordle. Your computer must have Java, the Java applet associated with one of your browsers. You go put it in, and it tallies up, and it shows you the frequency with which you're using the word. This particular Wordle, it's a student of mine at UNISA. By far, the most of it is the words were governance, followed by healthcare. And then there are ways, this is a very basic Wordle analysis. There are very refined ways by linking words together. One of the problems with English is the word south can be used on its own in going south, or south can be formed part of a south coast, south wind, whatever. There are ways for you to link those things together so that south, for instance, won't show up in such detail. It will show up as south coast, southwards, or whatever. But once you know which are your key concepts, and by the way, Wordle is one way of doing it. It's the beginning, it's not the end. You've got to do systematic content analysis after that. You must determine which are your key concepts. And those are the only concepts that you are permitted to use as search terms. I have got a rule with my students. If it a reference has not been derived through a search term, it's got to be removed. It's not part of the research. If you start including articles that you like but that are not particularly relevant to what you are doing, you are smudging the lens through which you are trying to get a crisp and clear image of what you are researching. So, to do your literature search, you are permitted to use only key concepts that have been extracted from your problem statement. All of the rest will be little cul-de-sacs. They will, in the end, be part of why your examiners say, why has he got this in? What has this got to do with what he is investigating? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, time has caught up with us. I'm well aware of the fact that I was about half an hour late. I apologize for that again. Some time or another, maybe they'll invite me back and I'll come and talk to you about other very important aspects of the research. If you are planning to submit a scholarly article to alternation, it goes through the same rigorous process of 2 blind peer reviews. But for those who either want to submit a post-conference article or staff members from our school, this issue of alternation is open to you to submit. I will explain tomorrow what the requirements are for the submission, and let me warn you, the biggest nettle bush is getting the format correct and being systematic in what you're doing. And until you get that right, consider your submission a boomerang. I'll keep on sending it back to you until you fix those things. There's one thing that's really bad for an editor, and that is to have something that is aesthetically wrong, but intellectually good. And the peer reviewers say, yeah, this is all right, you can publish it. But if the author then does not follow through and fix it, you're stuck with an article that should be going in, but it's not going in. Now, one of the things that I do in some of those issues, I see if I can find sub-editors. They're usually students, like our honors students. But let me warn you, they charge 300 rand an hour. So if it is chicken feed, what you give to them, it will cost you quite a bit to have it fixed.